is first of all, welcome to the WILDFIT topic call. Just remember to go ahead and turn on your cameras. It's always great if we can see your faces. I know it helps Eric whenever he's talking to you, and it's just going to make it way more fun and interactive all the way around. If you have a question as well, you can only ask that question if that camera is on. We just do that so that it can be more of a conversation, okay? You are going to be muted throughout the whole call. If you do have a question, I will either unmute you or ask you to unmute, just depending on your Zoom settings. If you have a question as well, you can raise your electronic hand to ask that question, because there's so many of us, we can't always see the full screen. So to do that, if you don't have the Zoom update, that is underneath participants. If you do have the Zoom update, that is underneath reactions at the bottom of your Zoom window. So just keep that in mind. And if you have a question that you want to ask in the chat, just remember to ask that publicly in the chat. Don't send any private messages, especially to Eric while he's teaching, just because he's going to be teaching and we don't want your question to be missed. And your question is always valuable to everyone on the call. So we really like to see that as well. Let's see here. Next Living WildFit events, a couple of dates that you might want to save. So if you have a pin, go ahead and get that out. The next topic call is going to be Wednesday, April 14th at 12 p.m. New York time. The next check-in call is March 17th at 2 p.m. New York time. And of course, back to spring calls are every Monday and Friday throughout the rest of March at 2 p.m. New York time, okay? Remember that you have that add event calendar. If you haven't added that to your calendar yet, you definitely should. I'm posting the link in the chat now, okay? Well, our speaker again is somebody that you all know and love, and he is going to be joining us to talk about Hunter Spring. Let's give a big hand to Eric.
Hello, hello, everybody. Hello, hello. How are you all? Good deal. Good deal. I just want to do a little straw poll first. I'm curious, how many, if any of you have experienced COVID? I'm just curious. Who's had a COVID infection? Anybody? Okay. All right. Not so many. Okay. Let's see the other pages. Keep your hand up because I'm looking through the pages here. Not so many. Okay. I was just curious. And those of you who had it, on a scale of on a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 being it was nothing, 10 being I question my existence. How was your experience? 4. Kat, how do you scale of 1 to 10? And this is the answer I get. I don't.
A -1, Eric.
Oh, -1. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay, cool. Just a little straw poll I was wanting to do with you guys all. I was curious. I am very excited about today's topic, and this is a topic that I guess the way I want to put this is that this isn't. I don't want you guys to go out into the main WildFit community and talk a lot about this right now, because and the only reason is that I just get too many questions, and I want to share it with you in the Living WildFit community, and then I want you to discuss it amongst each other and share your questions there, because I'm working on it at the moment, and I want to make and I don't want it I don't want it jumping out into the larger WildFit community, and then I get slammed on Instagram, and then I can't answer people. Is that fair? Is that fair, everybody? Are you guys okay with that? All right. So we're gathered here today to have a conversation about spring, and so I'm first of all going to tell you that we're going to be making a little bit of structural change in the next iteration of WildFit with the way spring is deployed. It will still be spring, and it will still involve moving into a ketogenic state, because that's an incredibly important state for the body to be in, no question about that. What we're going to be doing, though, is providing tracks. And by tracks, what I mean is, in a very real sense, I want it to be like a choose your own adventure. Now, did any of you guys have those books when you were kids that you could do that with? Like you get to, you walk through the, valley, and if you turn left, and then you have to turn to page 38 and stuff, and you pick your, so for those of you who didn't have that experience, it was kind of a cute book system we had as kids. And in the next iteration of WildFit, when people arrive at spring, they're going to be able to choose their spring path and other paths, by the way. For example, if somebody indicates that they're a smoker, they're going to get different content around that, you know, people who don't smoke don't need that content. So it's going to be a little bit more customized, and I'm very excited about that. Please do not ask me when. It's a huge project, and I'd be very surprised if it happened. Well, somebody already asked me when, didn't they? They already did, didn't they? I can see from the laughing that people, all right. But the point being is it's going to be a lot more customized in that respect. And the biggest area of change from a customization perspective is actually going to be around the deployment of spring. And so one of the things that's going to be included in this is a vegan spring. We have so many vegans. We have so many vegans in our community. And you know what's really crazy is I actually had a PR company. They're talking to me going, Eric, you know, you're not a vegan. You should come out against the vegans. I go, what? Yeah, you should come out against the vegans. Controversy creates clicks. You know, you have great arguments against veganism. You should come out against the vegans. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I am about freedom. I'm coming out for freedom. And so I want to support people in freedom. I will educate people. I will give them every bit of information that I can. I will encourage them to do what I believe might be the best for them. And then I will facilitate for them the psychological tools they need to live the freedom they want to live. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Right. And so there will be a vegan track. And the reason that the vegan track will be different is that, frankly, it is quite difficult as a vegan to achieve the same spread of amino acids. It's quite difficult, to maybe overstating it. It is more challenging than it is for somebody who's willing to eat meat and eggs and that kind of stuff. And this is a simple reason. It's a very simple reason. An egg has all the amino acids in it, as does a breast of chicken, as does a salmon steak, as does a piece of buffalo. It all has the full suite of amino acids. So whereas in the plant-based world, no plant has that. And so it means that there's a combination of different plants and or supplements that you would need to take. And even the American Vegetarian Society says right on their website, if you choose to go down this path, you must give additional consideration to your iron, vitamin B12, and amino acid composition. Like they say it publicly. It's known. And so in the next iteration, I want to have a track that supports people who want to maintain the vegan path as they go through the WildFit Challenge. Does that sound good to everybody? Cool. Now I will tell you that there will be information in there that will challenge them to be slightly more flexitarian than ideological, because I believe that once you become ideological about your diet, then you'll be willing to sacrifice your health for your ideology. And I don't believe in doing that. And so we will encourage vegans, and we will give them the information they need to have, and we will encourage them to be a little bit more flexitarian in their approach. And I will tell you that roughly 60% of the vegans that join WildFit become more flexitarian in their approach, which annoys the incredibly politically ideological vegans. And I'm okay with that. I want people to have the information and the psychology to live into the version of the diet that they want to live into. That's that. Then there will be the traditional spring, the spring that you've all come to know and love. I know for some of you it's a love-hate relationship, and for some of you it's a love-love relationship. And that spring will still be there with modifications for deeper or more shallow existence in that spring. And then there will be today's topic, Hunter Spring. Hunter's Spring. And I'm very excited about Hunter Spring because I do it regularly. And frankly, if I'm really honest, the reason I didn't talk about it so much before is because I was a chicken shit. That's the truth of it. Is I was afraid if I told people that I go for an entire week eating only meat, they'd be like, what? How could you do that? Because the indoctrination around vegetables and fruit and all this kind of stuff is so powerfully strong. So I want to talk to you about some realities for you, some absolute realities. So humans started in Africa, and arguably modern humans left Africa about 40,000 years ago, but pre-humans like Neanderthals left long before that. And they moved into areas where they were unable to eat the plants in those areas because they didn't have an evolved relationship with those plants. I always say to people, if you have a choice, let's say you had a choice of landing in the wilderness somewhere far from civilization, where ultimately would you want to land? Would you want to land in a natural rainforest on the west coast of Vancouver Island, or would you want to land in a forest or the savanna of Africa? And you might not know the answer to that, but I can tell you the answer. The answer is Africa. You don't want the rainforest on the west coast because there's nothing to eat there. Humans didn't come from there, and there's nothing to eat there. There's no plants. And so when humans first started moving around the planet, they actually spent huge amounts of their time as pure carnivores, basically unable to eat a lot of the plants in their life. And the ultimate proof of this, of course, is the people that crossed the Bering Strait. They didn't do it in 45 days. They did it over thousands of years, which meant thousands of years where they were eating seal and whale and not broccoli at all. And so I want you to know that humans cannot survive on bread alone. They can't. Humans can just about survive on fruit for a long period of time, and humans can just about survive on vegetables for a very long period of time. But humans can absolutely survive on meat, eggs, fish, and poultry completely. There's not a single nutritional requirement that a human being has that is not available in eating, in animal products. Not one vitamin, not one mineral, not one amino acid. But now we get into the hunter spring. The hunter spring is not to say that we are supposed to be on the carnivore diet. You maybe have seen this come up now. There's some people writing about the carnivore diet, right? Like guys, the carnivore diet is just the other end of the crazy spectrum from which the diehard ideological, like complete nut bars are on the other end of the spectrum. You are not meant to never have meat, and you're not meant to always have it. We're meant to be humans ultimately. And so when we talk about hunter spring, and when I say to you that there's not a single nutritional requirement that you need that you can't get from animal products, I am not suggesting that you suddenly become somebody who eats 100% animal products, not at all. What I'm suggesting is that humans have been hunter-gatherers for a very long time, and we have not traditionally been plant-based hunter-gatherers. We've been animal-based hunter-gatherers. We were hunters and then gatherers. And by the way, as you guys know, I've been visiting the Hadza people for something like 10 years, and I can tell you something about them. You tell me what you would deduce. You're walking with the Bushmen, and they spot a bush that has like root vegetables. So they stop and they dig up the root vegetables. You would deduce from that that they are plant-based at times. Yes, reasonable assumption. But let me tell you something. Here's when they don't stop and dig up the vegetables, when they are tracking something. Do you understand the distinction? If they are following game, they will not stop for those vegetables. A, the vegetables will still be there tomorrow. The vegetables aren't going to walk away, right? And the game will. And B, meat is the single highest priority of the hunter-gatherer community. They are meat-based. They are not plant-based. That's just the way that is. But they also don't simply sit and eat steaks. Like I've seen people that like write about the carnivore diet, and you see people on Twitter, oh, well, I've eaten nothing but steak for 28 days. I'm like, no, in the hunter's world, I can tell you that this is the way it works. They get the animal. And by the way, for any of you who are a little lighthearted, light-bellied, that's such a cute sweater. Sorry, it's a cute sweater over there. But for any of you who are like light, you don't want to hear about the realities of hunting, then get some cotton wool in, and then I'll let you know when I'm done. But when you're hunting, they get an animal, say a bush pig or an eland or some kind of antelope or what have you. And immediately what they do is they take that animal and they throw it onto a fire. And do you know how they make the fire? They make the fire like this. And in 30 seconds, they have a fire. They can make a fire without matches faster than pretty much any of us can make fire with matches. And they put the animal on there and they burn the hair off and they tenderize it. And then they cut it open down the belly. And then they take out very carefully, because there are certain organs that if you cut them out, they spoil the whole thing, right? So they're very careful. And then they take those organs, generally digestively related organs, and they give them to the dogs or they get rid of them. Then they start going after the other organs. And they go after the lungs, and they go after the kidneys, and they go after the liver, and they go after the heart. What do you suppose they do with those things? Anybody? They eat them. They put them on the fire briefly, and then they eat them. And I want to suggest that they prioritize them. Now, the people that are big fans of, a friend of mine wrote a book called The Carnivore Code, and he would tell you that the reason they eat them is that they are nutritionally important, and so they eat them for the nutrition. Nobody has taught the Bushmen nutrition. Do you understand? They don't know what vitamin C is. They don't eat it for the nutrition. They eat it because organ meats go off more quickly. So you can take normal meat, you can dry it, but organ meats, man, you got to eat that stuff now before it starts to go off, right? So they eat it preferentially, and they've probably been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years, which has probably helped us to evolve a nutritional dependency on them. So for example, if you're concerned about, how many of you have heard that you want to top up your vitamin C in the COVID era? Who's heard vitamin C during COVID, right? So you might think you need a grapefruit or an orange or a supplement, or you need liver. Liver is full of vitamin C. It's absolutely full of it. And by the way, I hate liver. I just want you to know that I hate it. Like there are some foods that I hate. Eggplant, hate. I hate it. And liver. Now, for me, hating eggplant is convenient because I happen to believe that nightshade vegetables and fruits are bad for us. So there, that's a case where my belief supports my lifestyle. But if you really want to learn from somebody who really has taken an interest in food, you need to be willing to learn from somebody whose beliefs are inconvenient to them. See, if somebody has food beliefs that are very convenient to them, then they've allowed their wants to influence their beliefs, if that makes sense. So here's the deal. I hate liver, but I find ways to eat it anyway, because I know that it's important. And just in case you guys are questioning my hatred of liver, let me really prove to you how much I hate liver. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I was in school, and I went to this, my parents were working, and so I had to go to an after school program and the lunch program and stuff like that. And the organization that did this, they served liver every Tuesday, and I hated liver, and I couldn't believe that this was the only choice. It was like, that's it, it's liver. And so at the very young age of whatever it was, 7-ish years old, I started lobbying the other students. And it took me about a month and a half, but I managed to stir up a full-on hunger strike where every single child refused to eat the liver. We all sat there, they put the liver down, and we refused, and the school changed the policy and stopped serving liver. So in case you want to question my credentials on liver hatred, I have proof that I hate liver. But my beliefs are not convenient to me. My beliefs are about arriving at the truth about our nutritional relationship with things. And so some of you might now have the next question about liver, but liver's a filter, and it's got to be gross and full of, it's a filter. And no. Liver is a filter, but it's not a filter the way we think of filters. You see, you think of a filter kind of being like the filter around your carburetor in your car, or maybe in your air filter or what have you. And you have to take the filter out because it collects. Has anybody here noticed you don't have to take your liver out? Like you don't have to. It doesn't get all clogged up and then you have to take it out. The thing is, the liver is not a filter, it's a processor of toxins. So it's not sitting there collecting toxins, it's processing them and then letting you push them out. And so the liver is incredibly nutritionally dense and helpful. But here's the problem, it's awful. I mean, the texture is disgusting, the flavor is disgusting, and there's nothing redeeming about it. So what do? I make chicken soup. I make an outstanding chicken soup, and when the chicken soup is done, I take about 2 cups of the soup, I put it in the blender, and I take a bunch of liver and kidneys, and I throw it in the blender, and I blend it all together, and I pour it back into the soup, and then I eat the soup. And I'm basically eating raw liver and raw-ish or warmed liver and kidneys. The reason I'm telling you this is not because I want you to go eat liver if you don't want to eat liver. What I'm trying to say to you is that I'm sharing with you something now, not because it's so convenient or not because I so like it or not. It's because I believe in it. I believe that it is very important for us to get all the nutrients that our ancestors were getting from their food. And so in Hunter Spring, we're going to be taking advantage of that reality, but then we're going to be taking advantage of another reality. And that is the reality that food is defending itself all the time. Matter of fact, the only food that doesn't defend itself is certain types of fruit. And even fruit defends itself. Particularly fruit defends the seeds. Fruit is designed to let the seeds become something. But everything else, every other vegetable, every animal defends itself against predation. It doesn't want to be hunted. And how I first kind of stumbled upon the idea of this sort of, in a sense, Hunter Spring and the general ideas about this is that my father, who is probably one of the most knowledgeable guys on the planet relative to human history and human migration patterns and so forth, asked me about an inconsistency in the WILDFIT methodology. He says, Eric, you tell people to avoid New World plants and focus on Old World plants. Yes, I do that. That's exactly right. I don't believe that the plants from South America are ideal for us. I'm not saying we can't have an avocado, but I'm saying we don't need them. And we certainly don't need tomatoes and that kind of the nightshades that come from South America. He goes, yes, okay. He goes, but if you're telling people that they should avoid the New World plants and not eat them so often, and that they should focus as best they can on Old World plants, why is it that they're allowed to eat New World animals? Ooh, it's a good question. It was a very good question, except because I wasn't just born yesterday, I already had the answer, and I told him the answer right then and there. And here's the answer. Animals defend themselves with speed and agility, camouflage, teeth, horns, and claws. They defend themselves from being hunted. Very rarely do animals protect themselves biochemically. There are some that do it. Skunks protect themselves biochemically, and there's an antelope called the water buck, and it produces an oil in its fur. So if a lion is chasing it, it will run into the water, and the oil will stop crocodiles from attacking it. So there are some biochemical defenses, and I suppose you could argue, I was just going to say, Brigitte, snakes are using poisons and toxins as a biochemical defense, but it's a biochemical defense that's delivered with fangs, right? It's delivered as a weapon. Now, plants, on the other hand, can't run very fast. They don't have the ability to defend themselves physically. Now, they have some physical defenses. They have thorns, and thorns have evolved in a variety of different ways. There are flowers that are thorns, there are seeds that are thorns, there are leaves that are thorns, there are branches that are thorns. So thorns have evolved in a variety of different ways. And some thorns are, for example, the buffalo thorn acacia is designed to stop big predators, but its thorns are designed to let little predators come in and prune the plant, because pruning plants is actually good for them. But then a lot of plants developed all plants develop biochemical defenses. And so what that means is that anytime you're eating a plant, even if the plant is good for you, there's so much good stuff in it, but it also is defending itself at the same time. And so you guys have all heard me, every one of you has heard me say, take a break occasionally from your alkalizers and or cycle the ingredients. You do not want to eat the same vegetables day in and day out, year on end. How many of you have heard me say some version of that, right? All of you. Because I repeat it all the time. And yet I bump into people and they go, Eric, I'm like 3 years on the alkalizer. Mother Nature would never have permitted 3 years on the alkalizer. It just wouldn't have done it. Mother Nature wouldn't have, I mean, no, especially if you're not rotating the ingredients. Mother Nature wouldn't have let you have the one plant every day for any long, like there's seasons, right? There's seasons. And so what happens is, and here's a fun trivia for you. I'm full of weird. I'm like the Cliff Clavin of the. For those of you who know Cheers, I have this weird head for trivial stuff. Giraffes. A couple things about giraffes. I think most of you have probably noticed they've got quite long necks. You've noticed this. Here's my question. Does anybody know this? I'm sure some of you do. You have 7 vertebrae. You have 7. How many does a giraffe have? Anybody know this one? 7. You got it. They've got 7. How weird is that? They are some seriously long vertebrae, right? They have the same vertebrae. And by the way, the reason that they have long necks is not so that they can reach the leaves at the top of the tree. That's a very quick Darwinian glance might make you feel that that's why they have those long necks. But no, the real reason they have them is because acacia trees are fascinating. First thing about acacia trees is that every single species of acacia tree in Africa has its own species of ant. Can you imagine? Like they've evolved this symbiotic relationship and they have their own species of ant. And that ant only lives on that tree, on that species of tree, and that's it. And what does the ant do? It lives there and it protects the tree from aphids and also from browsers. So an antelope comes and starts nibbling at the tree, the ants jump out and bite it on the tongue. Like the ants are protecting it. Super cool. Nature is super cool. I'm a huge nature fan. So now here's why giraffes have long necks, because the acacia trees, the minute they start feeling that they're being crunched upon, they start pushing tannin out into the leaves. So they don't store tannin in the leaves, but they start pushing tannin out into the leaves, which is a toxin and it's bitter. And so, but it's not that simple. Not only do they start pushing toxin into the leaves, but they start sending a pheromone out to the neighboring trees. So the neighboring trees start producing tannins to protect themselves. They talk to each other. They have the internet. So the reason giraffes have these long necks is because they need to be able to, this giraffe wants to eat at this tree, but the next giraffe can't eat at the same tree or at the next tree. It needs to eat 3 trees over. And so they've evolved long necks so they can spread their herd out over incredible fields, incredible distances, and still be able to see each other and defend each other. Entirely because the plant is defending itself biochemically. Now, what do you think would happen if you started eating those leaves? Do you think that would go very well? No, you haven't developed the defenses needed to eat those leaves. And so that's part of what's happening. Now, I just saw somebody, Sue says, I've been told by a paleo nutritionist that spinach could be preventing the absorption of some nutrients. Yes, yes. Spinach, kale, broccoli, cruciferous vegetables. If you are eating them all the time, you are going to have a hard time processing magnesium. This is one of the difficulties we have with WILDFIT. We want to get you onto the greens, largely to get you off the purples and the pinks and all the weird crap that's out there. But here's the problem, is that when you first get onto those heavy cruciferous vegetables, how many of you experienced some leg cramps when the very first time you went into spring? Did anybody? Yeah, because what happens is when you're eating those vegetables, your body has a hard time taking in magnesium. And so you can have leg cramps, which is why we recommend magnesium baths and magnesium supplements at that time, because those vegetables are in the way. But that's also why you're not supposed to eat them all the time. And so once we recognize that plants are defending themselves, what we begin to realize is that all plants are defending themselves, and some plants have some good nutrition in them, and even they are defending themselves. Now, what does this mean? It means that you want to eat the plant for long enough to get that which you needed from the plant, but not long enough for the toxins to build up and become a problem for you. Did that make sense? I'm going to say it again. It means that you want to eat that plant for long enough to get that which you need from that plant, but not long enough so that the plant's toxins and anti-nutrients build up in your system and cause you problems. There you have it. You know, like that's the deal. So now, what does that mean? Well, here's the next thing. You already know this as a WILDFIT principle. The RDA is bullshit. Like the RDA is a bad idea. It's a ridiculous idea. The only thing, if I have anything to do with it in the future, they'll have a thing that says RDA, recommended daily allowance, and there will be 2 things on it: air and water. That's it. There's nothing else you need every day. That's ridiculous. There's nothing else you need every day, but there are things you need every week, every month, and every year. There are things that you need on cycles. For example, vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 comes only from animal products. No, it does not come from algae and tofu. I'm sorry. It comes from animal products. And so if you're not going to eat animal products, it's important to supplement for it. You can. That's great. You can. But here's the deal. It stays in your system depending on your rate of metabolism and the way you're living and stuff. But it can stay in your system for apparently as short as 3 months, but as long as 12 months. Like it can stay. So what that means is that we go kill a mammoth and we eat tons. And by the way, when we killed a mammoth, do you think we ate and do you think we just like stopped when we were full, or do you think we gorged ourselves? I'm thinking we sat down and ate as much of that mammoth as we could fit in our stomach because we didn't have a fridge. And so we ate that mammoth and we stopped up on the vitamin B. We probably tried to dry as much of the meat as we could. And so we ate, and then we might not have been very successful hunting for quite some time. But we have B12 buffered, so we don't need to have it every day. Does this make sense to everybody so far? Okay. By the way, I want to share something with you about vitamin B12 that I discovered a couple of years ago doing some research about this. There are some symptoms of B12 deficiency, and one of them is aggression and anti-personal behavior. I don't know why this isn't, like, I was the first person I know of to spot this and start talking about it on social media, because I did it because it was funny. And the reason it was funny is, and you have to understand, I was a vegan for many years and I have all the respect in the world for somebody who wants to choose their own destiny. What I do not have respect for is somebody who is ideologically shaming other people into an unsustainable lifestyle and not doing it properly. I don't have respect for all that. I just don't. And so of course, how many of you have ever met or bumped into or, had occasion to meet somebody who was militantly, ideologically, and viciously vegan? Has anybody run into one of these? Yeah, they exist. And here's why they exist. Because vitamin B12 deficiency causes anti-personal behavior and aggression in order to make sure that you get your fair share of the hunt. And so in the biggest twist of irony, by being B12 deficient, you become increasingly aggressive and you become nasty. And what you really need is a steak. And or an IV drip supplement, like whatever, if you want to stick with it. But what I'm trying to say here is we can buffer stuff, but when we don't get enough of what we need, we're going to have illness. And so we want to make sure not that we have an RDA, but that we have seasonal cycles, and you guys are there. And so now, as we introduce this concept of Hunter Spring, this is the deal with Hunter Spring. The main purpose of Hunter Spring is to remove any inflammatory foods. And inflammatory foods are plants. Plants stimulate inflammatory, even the good ones. Too much of them, too regularly, and for too long, they will stimulate inflammation. And so in the Hunter Spring, you focus on animal products, meat, and nose to tail is the expression they use, which means it includes the organs and what have you. I can tell you, I ate liver 2 weeks ago. Like, no, not in chicken soup. I'm talking about they killed something and they put it on the fire and they took the liver and they put it on the fire, and then they gave me some of the liver, and it would have been rude for me to say anything else. And so I ate liver. And you know what? It really wasn't that bad. I lived through it. I lived through it. But so what I'm getting at is that in the Hunter Spring, we're going to focus on being the hunting phase of the hunting gathering. And we're going to go into a phase where during that time, we are only eating meat, fish, eggs, poultry. And we are not eating vegetables, or if we are, we're eating very minimal quantities of them. And this is particularly for anybody who's dealing with inflammation, autoimmune disease, leaky gut, and all that kind of stuff, because even healthy plants are not helping that, and often they're also causing it. And so now let's talk a little bit about how long one would do this for, or how frequently they would do it, or what have you. The truth, guys, is the best season to live in as your base season is spring. Like the truth is, the best place to live is in a natural spring, early summer kind of an area where you kind of are in and out of ketosis on a kind of regular basis. How many of you have noticed it's much easier to flip the switch going in and out of spring now than the first time you did it, right? Most of you. Some of you, it's probably still coming, but most of you will find it's much easier. And the reason is that our ancestors lived mostly in hunter mode, and then occasionally they found some honey, or then they found some vegetables, or then they found some fruit, and suddenly their pancreas would jump up and go, we can process that. But the pancreas was only jumping up for those emergency times, whereas now people live full on in emergency mode in the pancreas. So the base season, the best season to be spending the majority of the time in, is in a sort of spring to early summer type season. So now the question is, well, okay, what about Hunter Spring, and how long can I live in it? The truth of the matter is, you really truly could live in it indefinitely, because there's nothing nutritionally that you would miss from vegetables in your body's need. There are some things that I think vegetables do for us. I think that the fiber is very good for stimulating gut bacteria growth. I think that not necessary, but supportive. And I think that also insoluble fiber kind of acts like a bit of a scouring brush that cleanses out the digestion a little bit. And so I do think that it's a good idea. Plus, there are a bunch of vitamins and minerals and that kind of stuff that exist in those plant foods. And there's no harm in having another source of those things. And so for me, I typically, when I go into Hunter Spring, remember, I'm not going into spring typically for weight loss. When I go into spring, I'm going into spring because I think it's a good place to live, and because I'm looking for sports performance and energy, or because I'm doing a bunch of creative work and I want the clearest mental capacity ever. And that's why I will go in. And so typically when I go into Hunter Spring, I will go into Hunter Spring for probably about 2 weeks or so. And then I might have the occasional vegetables here or there. I might make an omelet and have some onions in it. Just why root vegetables? I know that our ancestors ate them from time to time. So even in Hunter Spring, there might be, less than 5%, but there might be the occasional thing like that you bring in, but very rare, and hardly at all if you are actively fighting autoimmune disease or you're actively trying to suppress inflammation and what have you. You want to give yourself a full break. So the question of how long, I don't think you can do it for too long. I just don't. I think you can stay in for incredibly long periods of time. That said, for most of you, I would say that somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks is a good window. If you have weight loss as a primary goal, then you want to go in and stay in for longer and come out for shorter. If you don't have weight loss as a goal, then you can surf that line between spring and summer much more liberally and have a more regular relationship with root vegetables and even fruit from time to time. So, and by the way, if you don't want to lose any weight, Maria, I just saw your comment. I want you to know that the way your body processes weight, it works like this. Your body will only keep weight that it believes is important to your survival, and it will only release weight that it believes it can. And that's true whether you're talking about fat or whether you're talking about muscle. And so the one thing is that fat will store on you whether you move or not. And fat will come off you whether you move or not. And you just change that by changing your diet and changing your metabolism, and then fat will come on or go off. That's the way fat is. But when you are living in a really balanced human diet kind of way, your body will not be very good at storing fat, because it doesn't want to add fat on all the time, because it only wants to store enough fat that it believes you need for your level of survival. So if you don't want to lose weight, then you have to focus on muscle. And the only way to build muscle is very simple. The only way to build muscle is to damage your muscle self-esteem and then put the right building blocks inside so that it can rebuild itself. That's it. And so if you want to make sure that you are retaining and gaining weight, then what you need to do is, like basically exercise works like this. There's three modes. There's three messages you send your muscles every day. One message you send your muscles: I don't care about you. How do you suppose you send that message? How do you send the message, I don't care about you? That's right. Do nothing or injure yourself, right? You nailed it, both ends. Do nothing or abuse. That's it. So if you have a do nothing day, then your body gets the message of, we don't really need these muscles. Now, long before your body starts metabolizing your muscle away or eating it, what your body will do is turn off muscle fibers. So I think you have 6 muscle fibers in the bicep, and what will happen is that at any given time, most people are running 2 of them, and then they start working out heavily, and then they start running 4. But then, like me, over the last 3 weeks or so, I haven't worked out that much, so probably I've turned 2 of my muscle fibers off. When I start going back to the gym, they'll turn back on again. Muscle, by the way, takes a long time to put on, but it takes a really long time to take off as well. But fat takes a long time to put on, but it comes off quite quickly. It can. And so when you want to build muscle, I said 3 messages. Message number 1 is, I don't care about you. Message number 2 is, I care about you. I like you. And that's a day where you use them, but you don't push them. You use them, but you don't push them. Then message number 3 is, you're a weakling and you're worthless. And that's when you go into the gym and you work out to the point of failure. So your muscles walk out and go, I'm just not good enough. And that's when they will want to build themselves. But they will only build themselves if you put the building blocks in. And I saw one of the most credible authors, I can't think of his name just now, but writing on Twitter about this. And he goes, if you want to build muscle, you got to use the muscle to failure. And then you got to eat enough protein, and you got to eat enough salt, and you got to get enough sleep. And I wrote to him and I go, dude, water. And he goes, oh shit. Because you see, you can do all the exercise in the world, and you can put in all of the protein you want, all the amino acids and all the salt. But if you're dehydrated, your body does not have the fundamental building block it needs to build a muscle. And so we want to make sure that if we want to retain or gain weight, but by the way, I love your comment here. Diane said, so true. My weight stayed steady during the second 90 days. I didn't need to release any, and my body worked. Your body typically will, when you get to health, your body will find optimal weight and stay there, and it will then only adjust the weight based on the level of exercise you're doing. So that's my dump, my disorganized dump on the concept of Hunter's Spring. Now I want to talk to you guys. Any questions you have, feedback, thoughts? Let's unpack it all. First hand I see here is, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Shema.
Hello, do you hear me?
Hello, I do hear you.
Thank you for this session. It's really interesting. So for me, meat is really not a problem, but I do have some questions about the how you do it. First, I heard when we do the spring that if we eat too much meat, we can get, it can transform in sugar if it's too much protein. So I was wondering, if we go in the Hunter Spring, is it possible that we can gain weight and then lose it? How does it work?
I listen, your body is going to create glucose one way or the other because your brain needs to eat it. So when you're eating protein, your body is going to figure out a way to grab whatever. You want to make sure that there's enough fat. That's where you're getting your energy from, not really from the sugar. And your body will turn that around and create the glucose that you need to create. But the idea that you could eat enough meat that you would cause yourself a blood sugar problem, I can't even imagine that ever happening. I just can't see how that happens. The other thing is that meat has a really high satiation value. In other words, it's actually hard to overeat meat, isn't it? Don't you get to a point, you can overeat meat if there's bread, or if there's rice, or if there's pasta. But meat by itself, it's really hard to overeat it. Your body kind of goes, that was yummy, but I'm done now. And so I would gauge that way, that you're eating focused meals of meat, not convoluted by starches and stuff like that. So your body will give you honest feedback about when you're full, and you'll reach satiation quickly with meat. And so I'm not the least bit concerned that you going on to a Hunter Spring would ever put weight on you. The only weight you will put on in Hunter Spring, in my opinion, is muscle mass if you work out while you're doing it.
Okay, and just one quick question. And so if you are in a normal spring, a mild spring or deep spring, you can eat as much meat as you want, or you advise to like limit it?
The only time that I'm concerned about somebody like overeating meat is when they're eating the meat in a complicated meal, like they're eating the meat in combination with starches and stuff like that, which allows them to eat too much and not process it very well. But no, to me, the only restriction on the only restrictions there on meat are quality. Like, come on, guys, get the best meat you can, both ethically and also environmentally, and like get the best that you can. And that's the only real restriction. And then the next restriction is how much you can really eat, because the truth is the satiation point is so solid with meat that it's hard to overeat it. It just is, and so I'm not the least bit worried about anybody over consuming meat unless they are eating meat with foods that convolute the digestive process and kind of mix up your signals. So for example, it's very easy to overeat a plate of salmon linguine. Very easy to do that, but very tough to overeat a plate of salmon and broccoli. That's much more difficult, and even more difficult to overeat just salmon.
Okay, thank
cool.
you very much.
All right, Suzanne. Hello, Suzanne. By the way, before Suzanne unmutes herself while she does that, one thing I want to say is I know some of you guys are WILDFIT coaches, and I just said that I don't want you guys out there in the community like sharing all this with everybody. If you are a coach and you are working with your clients and they're in spring, I wouldn't so much suggest that you push them into a Hunter Spring, but rather talk to them about it being totally okay to reduce their vegetable intake dramatically and increase their meat intake dramatically if they want, and move them into a Hunter Spring. But I don't want to get, until I've written some documentation and stuff for you guys, I don't really want you to face like a bunch of million questions about Hunter Spring. Just a quick message to all the WILDFIT coaches. So you can certainly start nudging people in that direction, and hang tight until we've produced you a bit of a guide where you can actually guide people through Hunter Spring properly. Cool? All right, Suzanne, you're up.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Yeah, I have really 3 questions. One is, so I can eat as many eggs as I like?
Yes.
Every day, because I eat a lot of eggs. I eat every day 2 eggs. I can't. So I thought I have to cycle it, but I love them.
The idea that eggs are bad for you is just rubbish. Like, there's no science at all that suggests it is propaganda and rubbish. They're not bad for you. Now, like the Daily Mail, I don't know if you guys saw me. I sometimes rant about this stuff on Instagram. So the Daily Mail produced this thing that said that like eating 2 eggs a day could, trigger diabetes. And what was really funny is that exactly a year before, the same newspaper, the Daily Mail, released this thing that said eating eggs fights diabetes. And the truth is they don't give a shit about the truth. They care about clicks. That's all they care about. That's all they care about. So then if you go and look at the study, they were talking about how these eggs could stimulate diabetes. Then what happened was, the weirdest thing is, I went and did the research. It turns out that first of all, there was never a link to diabetes. There was a link to increased blood sugar, but never a link to diabetes. So the newspaper took the leap from increased blood sugar to diabetes on their own without the scientists' help. Complete rubbish. That's the way the media works. But then the other thing is that it only happened to the women in the study group, not the men. How weird is that? How weird is that it only happened to the women and not the men? It's like, our biochemistry isn't that different from a digestive perspective. What's going on? Well, then it turned out that the men like eating eggs and the women didn't like eating eggs. The study was done in China, and the women were eating their eggs in the form of muffins, donuts, waffles, and pancakes. And we wonder why they were having elevated blood sugar. It's like, eggs are good for you. Now, Suzanne, the only thing I would say is I don't think anything except air and water is good every single day.
Yeah, that's what I remember you said. That's why.
That's it. And so I think if you want to eat 8 eggs, go ahead and eat them. But the one thing I would do is make sure from time to time you stop for a little while. Everything. That you should go without meat for a little while. You should go. Do you think that our relatives, our ancestors were so lucky as to hunt something successfully every single day? I can tell you that they don't, because I've been with one day I went hunting with the Hadza. We did 27 miles. For those of you who don't understand miles, let me just do the calculation. Really freaking far. That's what the calculation says right there. Really, it's something like 54 kilometers. It's a marathon. And you know what? We got nothing that day. A couple of small birds. I didn't get any food that day. Nothing. And so our ancestors would have had periods of time like that where guess what happens when you go into those? That's called fasting. That's winter. And when you go into those periods of time, your body does the coolest thing ever. It does autophagy. And you know what? If you want to know one of the biggest reasons that, like, there are a number of contributing factors to disease and why we have such prolific rates of disease, but one of them is this. Your body has this ability to go in and hunt down sick, old, and diseased proteins and burn them for energy. But most people living in the Western world never use that mode. It's an app. You have the app, but most people never turn that app on. The app is called autophagy. And the way you turn that app on is you turn that app on by having, for example, Hunter Spring, autophagy will kick in. And you also turn it on by fasting. By not eating things. And you know what happens when you go into a fast? By about day 3, autophagy's kicked in, and incidentally, you start producing phenomenal levels of human growth hormone, which is like super cool for your body. And so I just, you eat eggs like as much as you want, but then take breaks from everything.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And the other 2 things, the one is it's quite difficult to find organic meat, or I can only find some things. For example, liver, I can't find it. So it's better to buy the normal liver, or it's even worse than not eating it. And the other question is, because I have listened to a video on YouTube by Dr. Robert Lustig, and he said that the corn-fed animals can also cause the fatty liver. And so it's better grass-fed, but it's difficult also to know what are the organic meat I can buy, but is it grass-fed or corn-fed? That's quite difficult for me to discover.
Totally with you. So there is a WILDFIT principle. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the WILDFIT principles, I really suggest that it's a good idea to look at them again. Look at the principles. You'll find a copy of them in the Living WILDFIT book. And by the way, they're all being updated at the moment. So there's some refinements being made to them, and they're great. But there's a principle that will help you. And by the way, the reason I like principles is with a principle, you can make your own decisions about things. A principle is an understanding. So here's the principle. The principle is your health is far more determined by you getting enough of the good stuff than you worrying about putting in the bad stuff, right? Now, so based on that, what do you think my answer is? If you're faced with meat that you can't be confirmed is organic or that necessarily is grass-fed, what do you think the answer is?
Well, eat it.
Eat it. Eat it because you got to get enough of the good stuff. Now, with that principle, now let's talk about our preferences. Here is my preference in terms of quality of meat. Wild, like an animal that lived in the natural environment its entire life and then became food. That's ideal. Next is simulated wild or regenerative farming, like bison farming and that kind of stuff. It's pretty much damn wild, although they don't necessarily run from wolves for a living, right? So it's, kind of a safer version of wild. And then the next version after that is organic, and this is a category where you can have some or all of these things, but organic and grass-fed or pasture-raised, right? And ideally both of those things. But if I had I'll tell you, if I had a choice between a piece of steak that was organic and corn-fed and non-organic but grass-fed, I'm taking the non-organic grass-fed. Why? Because that's a closer representation to the natural diet of that animal, and I would rather have that. So now the truth is it's probably 6 to 1, half to the other, because with the inorganic one, you might be getting some pesticides you don't really want. And so the truth is what you really want is organic and grass-fed or pasture raised. And then what you want to avoid where possible is, you know, like the corn fed or corn finished things, chickens, you don't want eggs that way. You don't, if you can avoid them, you don't want that stuff at all. You want a chicken that went out and ate what chickens eat, and chickens don't sit and eat monocrop cultures of corn. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Harriet, over to you. Harriet, you're muted. I can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Sorry.
There you go.
Hello, sorry. When you're not in Hunter Spring or Deep Spring, and let's say you're in, you know, Mild Spring, summer, what's the minimum amount of meat you need, and on what kind of time basis to get the amino acids and the other things that you can only get to meat? So what's kind of the minimum dose when you're not doing a Hunter Spring or a Deep Spring?
You know, I've been digging into that question, and it's incredibly difficult to know based on it's incredibly difficult to know because it's very difficult to measure amino acids and really get a sense of the answer to that. So instead, what I've done is I've moved to the other marker, and that is B12. So we know that you'll go through your B12 in say 3 to 6 months. So what that says to me is that if you ate quite a lot of meat for say a week, and then you decided to go for 3 months without meat, you're probably absolutely safe. And incidentally, we know this, like, you know, if you guys really want to know why veganism is a thing, the way it is that when somebody is eating the standard American diet, they're unhealthy, they're in pain, they're sick, and they basically don't even know it. And then one day somebody comes along and says, wow, you know, if you gave up all this stuff, if you gave up meat, if you gave up milk, if you gave up sugar, if you gave up wheat, you would have a total transformation of your health. And then they do give up those things, and then they do have a transformation of their health. But giving up wheat does not change your identity, and giving up dairy does not change your identity on its own, and giving up sugar does not change your identity. But giving up meat changes your identity. Now you're a vegan.
Right.
And so now the one thing you realize is that your identity changed that day, and you give the identity change the benefit for the full recovery of your health. Well, except that there's one problem, and that is that there's a window of time that you don't need. There's a window of time that you've buffered up on amino acids, and you've buffered up on B12 and all that kind of stuff. And during that window, you won't feel the negative impacts of not buffering those things, right? So what I'm trying to say is that what I think is relatively safe is that if you wanted to go 3 months without meat, you could. I've done it. I went several years without meat. I will never do that again. I will never go a month without meat again, in my opinion, for me. But also, hey, your physical life has everything to do with this. I am a ridiculously active person. I want to maintain my muscle mass. I'm also, 50 years old. So I'm at that stage now where they say your muscle mass is going to start to degrade. So I want to do everything I can to fight against that, which means making sure topped up on healthy proteins, I'm working my muscles. So, we each have to take that decision for ourselves. I also believe that the requirement for meat is not as high for women as it is for men. And I believe that because I've watched the hunting patterns. And what happens is when we go hunting and we don't get very much, we eat it out there in the bush. The only time meat comes back to the camp is when we kill something really big. And then we bring meat back to the camp. So what that says to me is for the last several 100,000 years, women probably didn't have as regular a supply as meat as men did. And so, and incidentally, guess what, guys? Men, when they're vegan, I can tell within 18 months. Within 18 months, you can see it in their eyes. You can see it. You can already begin to see a little bit of, say, anemia, or just they start to look a little bit sallow if they're not supplementing and taking the precautions. But women can often get to 3 to 5 years before it really starts to show up. And so that says to me that it's not that you need to, you do not need meat so urgently that you need to be thinking about it all. Oh, have I had enough recently? If you've had it in the last 3 months, if you had quite a lot in the last 3 months, you're probably good. What would be optimal, in my opinion, is at least a good chunk of the best quality, healthy piece of meat at least once a week would be healthy. In Hunter Spring, you'd be eating meat every day. You might have one meal a day, but you'd be eating meat every day.
Great, thanks. Answered my question.
Good deal. Let's see here. We're going to go. I know where I was going next, but then my screen refreshed. Hold on. Oh, Lori, did you put your hand down? Did I answer your question? Come on, jump in. I was going to ask you. You were next in the queue.
Unmute.
There you go.
Okay. So yeah, kind of, we've been skirting around my question. So is ketosis of a priority in Hunter Spring or no?
You know, Lori, I think the way to think about it is that ketosis is not like the priority of Hunter Spring, but it'll be there. Like it would be very difficult to not be in ketosis in an extended period of fasting or Hunter Spring, because there's so few, like, you know, even now when you eat, even when you eat some of the bitter green vegetables and that kind of stuff, somebody who's quite sensitive can actually be triggered out of spring by even some of those vegetables. If you're not in ketosis in spring, I'd be in Hunter Spring, I'd be pretty surprised. Okay. But I don't think of it as the goal. I think it is just one of the seasons that's important for us to go through.
Okay. Yeah. And then also, if, in your opinion or your experience, if someone wanted to work on their body fat and improve their body composition, which form of spring would give them? I believe you had told me this in the past, that Hunter Spring might be the better of the springs to do that.
Yeah, I do. I think that the fastest and most effective results for body composition change would happen in Hunter Spring.
Okay. I just wanted to
that, remember, every plant, even the good ones, require a bunch of energy to process the anti-nutrients and toxins that are in the plant, even the good ones. So when you are in Hunter Spring, you're not distracting any aspect of your body. Meat does not fight you at all. There's no, the fight was all done pre-harvest. And then once you're eating the meat, it's not fighting your digestion. And so I think you're going to get the lowest level of inflammation and the highest level of muscle growth and the best stimulation of fat metabolism on Hunter Spring. Perfect.
And still same thing between 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks, and how long you like it, and how good does it feel, and I'll tell you that it feels good. It just does. It's a bit weird that when you've never done it before, and you're like, wow, my parents kept telling me to eat my vegetables, and finally I don't have to do that. It's a weird feeling, but the truth is it feels absolutely fantastic. And then you might find, for me, it's not so much that I like feel the need to come out of it. It's that sometimes an event comes along and it's like, oh, there's a watermelon here, and I'm going to break spring, and I'm going to have some fruit and stuff like that. So it's more about me creating a little bit of variety in my life. But remember also, weight loss isn't the goal for me. So I'm not concerned about that.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not really concerned about weight loss so much. I just wanted to improve the body composition. So I don't care about the number on the scale.
I think that, just to really nail it down, if you think about the priorities of Hunter Spring's main priority, in my opinion, is to reduce inflammation in the body. It's to reduce inflammation. Number two, it's to, really, really top up on the healthy fats and proteins that you're going to get. And number three, it's to keep you in a healthy level of ketosis for a period of time, which of course then goes on to number four, which is potentially stimulating autophagy, especially if you fast during that, like on and off during that time, and also human growth hormone production, same basis.
Cool. Well,
Hunter Spring is outstanding for running, Nancy. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just saying I'm actually fasting right now, but I'm going to be breaking that over the weekend. So I'm thinking maybe I'll just go right into Hunter Spring.
Yeah, but remember your stomach is small, from fasting. So break gently, but yeah, break. And Nancy, you said, is Hunter Spring good for running? Yes, absolutely it is. But I want you to think about something. If a Hadza Bushman went running, and only ate carbohydrates, what would the body deduce about that hunting trip? Anybody? You've just been running for 20 miles and all you ate was carbohydrates. There, you got it. Denise has got it. It's that you failed, that you're not that good a hunter, right? Humans are attrition hunters. Let me be very clear about this. There has been some debate over the years about, were humans really hunters, or were we scavengers, or what were we, and so on. And I suspect that the Australopithecine might have done a fair bit of scavenging and so forth, but even chimpanzees are incredibly effective hunters. But here's something interesting. Some research was done some years ago where they put model airplanes up in the sky to see how far away exactly with GPS, how far away exactly humans can see the planes from. And the reason they did this is that the planes were roughly the size of vultures. And the way scavengers find kills to scavenge is they see vultures in the sky. So it turns out that humans can see vultures from about 6 miles. Well, here's something interesting for you. Not one of you can outrun a lion, which is the top scavenger in the bush. Not one of you can outrun a lion for 6 miles. And then hyena is number 2. Not one of you can outrun hyena for 6 miles. Not one of you can outrun a jackal for 6 miles. In fact, not one of you can outrun any scavenger over a 6 mile distance. Conversely, there is not one single prey animal in Africa that can outrun you over 30 miles. Not one. We are long distance attrition hunters. That we have largely run our prey down over very vast distances. And so long distance running has been a big legacy of human beings. But the trouble today is that we get all these people talking about carb loading and taking glucose pills and all this kind of stuff, which is the equivalent of failing as a hunter. So go for your run and then eat a nice piece of organic grass-fed beef or something that shows your body that your hunt was successful. Whenever your body feels successful, it does the right things. When your body feels like a failure, it doesn't. So yes, we are attrition hunters. If you want to go for a nice long run, incidentally, I think there are some other discussions about long distance running that you should be aware of, like what kind of running shoes you wear and all that kind of stuff. It's another conversation. But definitely, if you are already a long distance runner, all I'm going to suggest to you is, for me, when I do a serious workout or I do a serious long distance run, I come in and I eat protein, because that's what my body is asking for after that big run. All right, let's see here. Who is next? We're going to go to Gina. Gina, you're up.
Hi, thank you so much.
Okay, wait, Gina, just one quick thing. Guys, I know that we are already at time. I'm getting pings from my team telling me that we're over time. And I get this feedback sometimes from members. Well, the meeting went late today and I had other things and it's really inconvenient for me when the meeting goes late. And then, from my perspective, it went late because I wanted to give more. And so what I'm saying to you is I'm going to stick around for an extra 10 or so minutes. I do have a dinner I have to get to. I'm going to stick around and talk to as few more people I can. If you need to go, please go, and don't be mad at me for going over an extra 10 minutes. I just want to give you more. And if you're going to miss it because you have something, it's recorded in your membership. So it's okay. So it's just win, 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 win. It's just lots of winning. Are we okay with that? Charlie Sheen would be very impressed. It's all about winning. All right, Gina, you're up.
All right, thank you. I've been in WildFit since August of 19. I've done the 90 days like 3 times. I've done Back to Spring 3 times. I'm in my mid 50s. I have so many awesome, outstanding non-scale victories, but I can't get the scale to budge. So I'm seriously considering this hunter spring. I don't have a gallbladder and I don't process meat really well. I don't digest it easily when I eat too much. And I'm allergic to all seafood. So I'm just curious, is this the kind of thing that I should be pursuing? And if so, then what kind of suggestions do you have for helping with digestion with all of that meat?
I don't have a specific answer for you on the gallbladder issue. It does strike me that because the gallbladder is so responsible for fat processing and stuff, that you would probably want to be somewhat cautious. So here's my undertaking for you. Is I'm going to do a little bit of reading about that, and I'll post something in Living WildFit about gallbladder relative to carnivore. But I will say something else. Most of the people that are in the carnivore movement or the keto movement believe in what they call low carb, high fat diets, and I don't believe in low carb, high fat diets. I believe that high fat is a tool. It's a hack that we can use to achieve certain things. But our ancestors did not have regular access to high fat. So again, any food rule that you have that violates evolutionary principles should be, very circumspect, should be looked with skepticism. And so, the biggest problem I suspect with the gallbladder and carnivore would be overeating fat. And because it would be harder to process. So in your case, what I would probably suggest, and I'm saying probably, and this is not medical advice, it's an opinion, and I'll do a little more research to see what I can find. But my opinion would be that you'd want to get leaner meat. And by the way, all of you should be wanting to eat, you know, leaner meats anyway. Our ancestors, again, mostly ate animals that were sub 10% body fat. And today we eat animals that are often 25 to 30% body fat. So I think that, Gina, in your case, I would be looking at, like, preferentially, I would want to eat things like buffalo and ostrich and that kind of stuff, potentially. That said, and Kat, please make a note of this to communicate with Bryant that I just want to do a little bit of digging into the gallbladder carnivore issue because I want to give a better answer.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, you are up, Maria.
Okay, great. Well, you've already touched this area a bit, but I want to get it more clear. I'm in coach training at the moment, and in the training, there was this part that we spoke that fall is for athletes and spring is more like renewing and cleansing and maybe do some cardio. But what if I want to do heat and weight exercise and do hunter spring? Am I doing more harm or good to my body?
So Maria, one of the things that is a little bit difficult is with WildFit is there's some inconsistencies there are some inconsistencies between the WildFit challenge and then living WildFit. And the reason for some of those inconsistencies are that many people, their metabolism is stuck. And so we're trying to shake the metabolism out. We're trying to jar it, you know? So for example, we encourage eating high fat. I don't believe in high fat as a lifestyle. You know, we encourage going into deep spring. I don't recommend that people necessarily have to live in deep spring all the time. And so, you know, and we recommend that women particularly don't do intensive exercise if weight loss is a goal for them, when they're in that, because for many of them, again, because their metabolism is stuck, heavy exercise is one of the things that might keep their metabolism stuck. But once they've unstuck it, then they're a lot more free about that. So the truth is, if you told me you were getting ready to do some serious sports, I would tell you to go into, I would tell you to prepare with fall for a little while and build up your glycogen stores by eating some root vegetables and so forth. And then I would get you to convert to a hunter spring 2 days beforehand or a day beforehand, and then do the sports deep in hunter spring and build muscle, and it would work. And, you know, I've been testing this in my own life. Now, again, my body's different than yours. And, you know, we all have to find our own sweet spots. But what I have found very, very helpful for me is when I am wanting to be incredibly athletic, when I want incredible power and also high mental acuity, the best place for me to be in is spring, and even better is hunter spring. And exercise is absolutely good during that time. The reason exercise is not ideal during the WildFit challenge in spring is because many of our clients come to us looking for weight loss. And the trouble is that exercise is actually not a good strategy for weight loss, especially for women. Intensive exercise raises cortisol. Cortisol makes your blood sticky and makes it harder for you to lose weight. But once you're category 1 and you're not trying to lose weight, go to it. Have at it. Jump in. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Okay.
This is my 12th day on hunter spring now, and I'm doing cross-country skiing and going to gym and jogging and all. And this last Sunday, I went for 1 hour jog, and it was snowing. There was huge amount of snow. It was like running in sand, and I was exhausted. And I went for a sauna, and it was maybe 1 or 2 p.m. and I was exhausted all day long, and I just slept. Did I do harm to my body?
No, I doubt you did harm to your body. I mean, first of all, look, yes, you did harm to your body, but if you want your muscles to build, you have to harm them. So, you know, I'm not overly worried about that. Plus, it's, you know, this idea that we're supposed to have like a regular, like Steve Harvey does, you know, billionaires don't sleep, he says, you know, this bullshit. Yes, they do. Jobs, Gates, Bezos, all are documented saying that they want at least 7 hours of sleep at night, right? But you know what is also huge is napping. and changing the cycles depending on what you're doing. So if you were super intensive and you did this huge exercise, it was really tough, and you went for the sauna, and then you were shattered the next day. Yeah, okay, good. Eat some good protein, recover, and go do it again.
Okay.
By the way, can you tell the difference between like disastrous, abused, tired, and awesome, used my body well, tired?
Yeah, and it was the first one.
Well, then
last
maybe
Sunday.
then you may well have gone too far. You may well have pushed too far,
Yeah.
and that's okay from time to time. And that's why extreme sports allow us to test the boundaries of those things.
Yeah, but I know the difference.
Sorry?
Thanks. I know the difference.
Good deal. Excellent. Thank you. Tillman, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Eric, wonderful to talk to you again. We talked the last and first time about a year ago when I did my WILDFIT quest. We talked about the problem which I had, which I have been having for years and even decades, and I'm 36 years old, that I feel tired every day. And we talked about the importance of flirting. It was a wonderful discussion about the testosterone building and things like that. Fast forward to now, I've lost 12 kilograms through WILDFIT, and I should be feeling better, but I don't. However, I have a new diagnosis. I was diagnosed with a sleep disorder, which finally explains the fatigue that I suffer from. Basically, not to go into that too much, just the sleep quality is bad because my brain is too active even during deep sleep. Anyway, so the question arises whether ketosis is good for everyone or not. I mean, I have lost 12 kilograms, but I haven't felt any better even when I am in ketosis. And then I talked about this actually with Ariel during one of the last calls, and she encouraged me to ask you. I have also a running coach, and I respect him a lot for his expertise, just as I respect you, Eric, so much for the fact that you're not dogmatic, but that you're open to debate and kind of the science of it, if you right, if you may call it that way. So if you don't mind, I would like to read a message that my coach sent to me, and I would, because I don't know whom to believe. I want to believe you, but I also want to believe my coach, and he says the opposite. And I would like you to react to his arguments.
Go for it.
So he writes, I do applaud nutritional experimentation, but I have a very strong opinion on this very concept. My opinion is that no athlete interested in training effectively and no person interested in health should ever do a ketogenic diet. I believe it's counterproductive and unnatural. Countless studies have proven a high carbohydrate diet to be superior in producing athletic performance and training adaptations. And I believe humans, like other anthropoid apes, to be essentially frugivorous, and thus thrive on a diet high in plant foods and carbohydrates. I recommend sticking to a carb-heavy diet with adequate protein and fat too, of course, if you want to stay energetic, healthy, and consistent with your training and life. That's what he says. Do you want to react to that?
He's wrong.
How can I convince him?
I don't know how else to put it to you. Like, he's just wrong. Like, even chimpanzees, which would be the closest representation we have to our ancestors from 6 million years ago. And by the way, during that 6 million years, we've spent the majority of that time living on the savannah without access to fruit. But even chimpanzees are. They eat meat at every opportunity that they can. They are incredibly effective hunters, and they do have very high fruit diets. But they may be closest represent to say what our pre-Australopithecine relatives would have been like, say 6 million years ago. But if you go now and walk the bush with the Hadza Bushmen, who are probably the closest representation to the way our ancestors have lived during the last 6 million years, rather than 6 million years ago, and certainly during the last 300,000 years that Sapiens has existed, you will find that they rarely eat fruit because it's not available. They don't have an app for that. And they occasionally dig up root vegetables. They eat honey any possible time they can. They have an incredibly powerful craving for carbohydrates. They have a huge drive for carbohydrates, but they have that drive because carbohydrates are rare. And so they have to have the drive to push them to go get them, but they're rare. And by the way, here's something else, Tillman. I don't know how old you are, but can you tell me something? How big was a strawberry when you were a little boy?
I'm 36. I have no idea.
Okay, well, let me tell you, at 50, when I was a little boy, no strawberry was bigger than my thumb. Not one. Like now, strawberries are the size of small apples. And the reason I point this out to you is that naturally occurring fruits that have not been manipulated by by breeding or by gene manipulation, but either way, naturally occurring fruits are vastly made up of pit with a tiny little bit of flesh on the outside and then the skin to protect them. The payoff of them is incredibly small. Just 3 weeks ago, I took Paul Saladino from the Carnivore Code and Anthony Gustin from Perfect Keto. I took them to go visit the Bushmen, and they got to eat the berries. And the first thing they found is you have to eat about 6 billion of them to get anywhere because there's so little. And then the two of them got diarrhea for days because that's what fruit does to us. So no, we are not frugivorous. We may have had largely frugivorous ancestors up to about 6 million years ago. But at the point that our ancestors started making their living in the veldt, in the bush veldt or in the savannas, no, we became hunters. And this is not, I mean, look, Tillman, where are you? Are you in Germany?
Finland.
Finland. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having an accent problem today, and I think I've made that mistake with you before. Now I think about
Actually,
it.
I am half German, half Finnish.
Oh, so I'm not way off. I'm not way off. But
it's funny. Sometimes people hear from my accent that I'm Finnish, and sometimes people hear from my accent that I'm German. There has been so far nobody ever saying you sound somehow Finnish and German. I'm still waiting.
All right. Well, here's the deal. You used to have mammoths in your country, both of them. You used to have mammoths in Finland. You used to have mammoths in Germany. There were mammoths in North America. There were mammoths everywhere on Earth, just about. And when they disappear, they don't disappear because suddenly the Ice Age ended. They disappear because humans arrive on each landmass and then eat them, every one of them, and the woolly rhinos. And we are hunters. Every aspect of us is about being a hunter. So your running coach is, I don't know what else to say. He's wrong. It's all I can say. And the idea of carb loading was an 80s idea because it was based on this idea. When you eat sugar, your body produces insulin and then you basically, your body says, okay, I'm going to put some of the sugar in my blood. And then when my blood is full, then I'm going to put some of the sugar in my muscles and in my liver. And that's called glycogen. And then when that's full, I'm going to start storing fat. And so the idea was that, of course, you wanted to top up on your glycogen before you went for a long run because you didn't want to run out of blood sugar. And that mentality through the 80s had people carb loading and eating sweets and fruit and crap while they were running the marathon. Do you know what I did when I ran the London Marathon? I didn't eat a damn thing. I didn't eat one damn thing. And you know what I also didn't do? I didn't hit the 17-mile wall like all the carb eaters did. The carb eaters hit the 17-mile wall. They can't go any further. Why? Because they carry 2,500 calories of blood sugar. They burn through 2,000 calories of it to run 17 miles. And then their brain freaks out and says, do not run anymore. You're going to die. Whereas when you are metabolizing fat, you can run indefinitely, which is why a friend of mine ran 9 marathons in 7 days in the Sahara. It's why I fasted my way up Kilimanjaro and had the easiest summit of my 7 summits. My easiest summit was the one where I did not eat, because what the problem is that the idea that you eat your food for now, your energy now, is an outdated, wrong system of metabolism. The food you are eating today is for your energy next week. And so if you want to prepare for a long distance run or climbing Kilimanjaro, you eat appropriately a week before and then you can fast your way through the exercise. I ran the London Marathon. I did not eat one of the snacks they offered. I did not eat any of the sweets, the fruits, the juices, nothing. I drank water and I ran the marathon. And by the way, my two buddies carb loaded and carb loaded and carb loaded, and they could not walk for 2 days after the marathon. I had to take time off work. I was at work the next day going to meetings because I was healthy. I'm sorry, he's wrong. I don't like saying that about anybody. I like to be open-minded. I like to say, let me try and understand the position. Like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got it. Do you have any quick comment on my sleep disorder? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I would highly recommend that you do a Vipassana retreat and quiet the demons. And I highly recommend that. Go and do a Vipassana retreat. If you can find one locally, if you don't have one in Finland, they definitely run them here in Estonia. You can find them here in Estonia. And then of course, the best ones are going to be in India. So where it all begins. The other thing I would suggest for you is that you really jump in and develop a really solid meditation practice. And that will be painful for you. I can tell you. I don't know if you'll meditate already, but my assumption is that it would be painful for you because you, like me, have a million things going on inside there. And
well, actually, the thing is, I've tried it so many times, and it doesn't really do anything for me. I'm very calm by nature, so I don't have any troubles doing it, and I don't mind doing it, but I don't get any.
What's the longest time you've ever sat and meditated for?
Sorry, say again. Oh, the longest time.
Longest time you've ever sat and meditated for?
Maximum perhaps in maybe 1 or 2 hours, up to 30 minutes usually.
Yeah, I completely changed my life last year when I went on a retreat and they made us do 5-hour meditations every day, or 3 of the 5 days, 5-hour meditations. I am a new person. I am a new person. And Vipassana, by the way, is like 14-day meditation to a degree. I won't get into how it works or what it works. I think 10 days, but it's incredible. But now here's the other thing, Tillman, is keep a notepad by your bed. And every time a thought pops up, you see, the reason that thoughts bounce around in your head is they want to live. Thoughts want to be remembered. And so,
but I don't have any thoughts. I'm really calm.
But they're saying your brain is too busy. So your brain is doing something.
During deep sleep, but not consciously.
Then I'm going to recommend, there's a sleep specialist I want to recommend to you, and I'm just going to look him up here for you, so I can give you his contact details. And then the other thing is, let me just ask a couple of quick things. How dark is your room when you sleep?
Totally.
And how cold?
Sometimes I do quite often keep the window open, even during winter in Finland. So it should be pretty cool. But if it's not open, then perhaps 22, 23. Yeah,
try to get down to 18 if you can. And also try taking an ice bath before you go to bed.
Oh, I thought that's in the morning.
No, do it before you go to bed. When you like, it's almost like you can stimulate a form of hypothermia. You have a totally cold bath before you go to bed. It's counterintuitive because you think you want to have a nice warm bath before you go to bed, but the truth is no.
How long should a cold shower be?
Bath is better than shower.
Can't. I have a sauna and a shower. That's all.
Okay. Then the shower, I would say you probably need to really cool your body temperature down. I would say you probably need at least 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. With maximum coldness.
Yeah. And that's why a bath is better, because you can just sit in it, and a bath will go. Guys, I'm now late for dinner. Tillman, I want to suggest that you contact my friend, Michael Bruce. I was just looking up his website for you, but I might.
Oh, I tried to contact him. Do you have an email address?
Can you reach out to the team? And guys, I do have Michael's email address, but I don't give it out without asking him first. So let me see what I can do there. But definitely somebody make sure Tillman gets Michael's website details. I'm sure he's got it, but just make sure. And then let's see what we can do there. Tillman,
and I have done his quest. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much.
One last thing I saw this keep coming up is that some of you are going, this is a little confusing between Deep Spring and Hunter Spring. No, Hunter Spring is just a form of Deep Spring. That's all. It's Deep Spring without the vegetables. Just that's it. And it's perfectly healthy and it's awesome. And I'm looking forward to hearing back from you guys as some of you jump in and give it a try. And I look forward to our next session like this. I really enjoy spending this time with you guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.